There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? New Band Channel, where we talk about those faces. Talking news. Debbie. Cassie Barons has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chattanooga and Middle Valley both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She was found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. News, big stories.
Welcome to Chasing a Murderer, Talking News. My name is Debbie. Please, guys, take one moment just to push the like button or subscribe and the notification bell if you would like notifications whenever we have new uploads. So today we are going to be talking about a very devastating story. It happened, this tragic event happened on Thanksgiving, and the story's coming out of Missouri, St. Peter's. This young lady, her name is Amy Killian, and she has a 6-year-old daughter, 11-month-old son, and she was 5 months pregnant with her third child. She was in a relationship, and she was unfortunately in this relationship and reaching out to unknown meeting sites, speaking with men. I don't have those sites available right now. According to several articles, she was communicating with a strange man that she met online. And several articles also say that she kind of solicited, I guess, several times in the past. So I don't have the complete details on that right now either. So according to investigators, Amy leaves her house in the early morning hours of November 26th, in between 1:15 to 1:30. According to her family, they say that she was going to get a pack of cigarettes, but she never returned. So Amy's boyfriend and her stepfather began to look for her, and that's about 20 hours after she left her house. They say that they actually found her purse and some of her clothing at Old Town Park, which is less than 500 feet from her home. And according to investigators, they said, quote, "It was not long after that and the victim's lifeless body was found stashed deep in some bushes in the back of a piece of property," end quotes. Investigators got quick on this case, guys. They really did. And they started researching, doing some investigating, found out that she had communication with this guy, and that they had set up a meeting time for her to have consensual sex with this guy. They exchanged numbers, and they absolutely agreed that this was consensual. When they had discovered Amy, they discovered that she had been stabbed more than 20 times. Overkill, guys. And they stabbed her in the head, neck, and abdomen. This is a very violent attack. This is something that just, you wonder what's going on with that. Police say, quote, "This was not a random act of violence. This was a targeted act of violence," end quote. The prosecutor said, quote, "Unfortunately, the victim and the defendant in this case were engaged in a potentially dangerous situation, and ultimately, she lost her life," end quote. Although they tell us this, they didn't tell us everything that they knew. So there's a lot more going on with this than we realize. And shortly there was an arrest with this man that she was communicating with, and his name is Damian Delgado of Missouri, so O'Fallon, Missouri. In fact, he was charged with fatally stabbing this woman, killing both her and her 5-month infant child that she was carrying. That's hard to even think about. So a lot of people have questions as to why she did what she did with her having children and this sort of thing, but ultimately that's not the priority or the main factor in this. What we need to be worried about is this very tragic loss of life. She trusted this person, and unfortunately, it was her mistake. I have tried to warn women over and over and over and over about men that are out there searching to do these type of things. Now, Delgado doesn't have much of a criminal history. And there's really no motive, they say, for this very, very violent killing. So the motive is yet to be determined, which is, it's kind of obvious what's going on here. He was hunting this girl, that's for certain, but because it was so violent, it's going to be hard to understand exactly what was driving him with this. You know, was it sexual? Was it anger? Was it hate? What was it? They're saying as they look over what they can on the background on this guy, it just really is unexpected for him to do something like this. I guess there's no warning signs out there for that. So the guy accused, Delgado, I'm having trouble with that name, as police say that he actually attempted to kill himself by slashing his wrist on his front porch on November 3rd. And that was in St. Louis. He was treated in the hospital and survived. So it's very obvious there's a lot more to the story, but they're not wanting to share that. And they just don't want to take away from, the prosecution part of this. At this time, he is held in the St. Charles County Jail with a $1 million bond. So it seems that investigators have quite a bit of evidence that they collected, and they said that they found several drops of blood on the sidewalk and fence at the crime scene, as well as a bloody knife. Testing the blood showed that it actually belonged to that unknown man at the time. And the girl's mother, Amy's mom, has been, she's been seen on several media sources and video, and you can see where she has the younger child in her lap when she's being interviewed, and she's just devastated. She says even though they have some answers, there's just still so many questions unanswered. Next is send out my love to this family. I am so sorry for your loss, and it was very sad and unnecessary. So right now I have a press conference clip for you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and let that play and let this video close out at its end. So I want to say that those police department and investigators, if I can talk, actually did an amazing job being able to find answers and close this case as quickly as possible, and find examples for the rest of the nation. Thank you guys. Here's that clip.
Out of an incident that occurred on November the 26th, just last week. I'll begin by briefly describing the details of the events that occurred that evening, as well as where the investigation led, and ultimately, of course, the individual charged. So police were informed late evening on the 26th of November that there was a young lady that was missing. This young lady lived in the city of St. Peters. She had two small children. She was reported to have left the residence to buy cigarettes and had not returned in approximately 20 hours. The next day, members of her family, her stepfather and her boyfriend, were in the area searching for the victim. In the process of that search, one of them discovered her purse, and a short time later, items of clothing were discovered nearby. At that point, the family members contacted St. Peters Police Department. Immediately, numerous St. Peters police officers showed up at the scene, and it was not long after that the victim's lifeless body was found, stashed deep into some brush at the back of the property. Before I get into more details, I just want to say this is a tragic situation. You've got a young mother of two who we later found was also pregnant. So 3 children lost their mother, and one of the children, the child with whom she was pregnant, also lost his life. I also want to point out that, as we'll explain here in a moment, this was not a random act of violence. This was a targeted act of violence. And if it wasn't for the outstanding police work by the individuals on either side of me, this case may still be unsolved. I can tell you there were 24 investigators dedicated to this case from day one, around the clock. They're still around the clock. The investigation still has a lot more work to be done, but to be in there with them, to be in the command center, to watch as evidence unfolded, it was a remarkable thing. Great, outstanding teamwork. This is the textbook definition of good police work. So initially, there were several items at the crime scene of potential evidence, one of which were several droplets of blood. And crime scene investigators were able to seize samples of that blood, which was later tested. We'll talk about that in a second. Investigators also discovered early on that the victim often communicated via an application on her phone called Text Now. They subpoenaed records, Text Now, and through exhaustive investigative efforts were eventually able to connect her very last communication to an individual by the name of Damien Delgado. Further investigation revealed that Delgado was seen on surveillance video about 10 to 15 minutes before he met up with the victim at a local gas station. Department of Revenue records were reviewed, and his photo was compared to the surveillance video. We had a positive ID. The victim and Delgado had connected with one another online, and they had arranged a meeting that night in the early morning hours of November the 26th. Aside from that, there was no connection between the victim and Delgado. Further investigation led to the residence of Delgado, where several items were seized pursuant to a search warrant. Officers were on to Delgado, I would say probably 4 days into it at the latest. Eventually they were able to obtain buccal swabs to prepare for DNA analysis, and the St. Charles County Crime Lab was able to confirm that blood that was found at the scene on a knife, on the sidewalk, as well as a nearby fence, came back to an unknown male individual. That unknown male individual turns out to be Damien Delgado. Just last night, my office charged Damien Delgado with murder in the first degree, armed criminal action, and murder in the second degree. The second degree murder, of course, would be the fetus who lost his life. I should say this was a approximately 5-month-old, fully developed fetus. Judge Pelican issued a warrant for Delgado's arrest, set his bond at $1 million, and as we speak, Delgado is currently in the custody of the St. Peter's Police Department. Again, I can't stress enough how much of a team effort this was to watch it firsthand unfold. It's truly remarkable.